Where are you? Here.
Martian Manhunter Volume 3, Number 1, The Others Among Us, opens the cane of biblical lore, standing over a slain Abel, bloodied stone in hand, as John Jones monologues something fierce about how murder is inherent in human DNA. Dormant in most of us, but still there. He says he thought he never had to worry about it, that as an alien, it was foreign to his DNA, and no matter how long he walked among us, he was safe from this disease infecting him. He says a year ago, he'd agree. But a year ago, identity crisis happened. One of the JLA's closest allies killed the wife of the elongated man. This ally was killed, and the JLA, awash in paranoia and distrust, disbanded, effectively tearing his adopted family apart. We see him in the rain, following a telepathic signal telling him to hurry, a scared signal. We see 30 minutes ago, New York City, probably near the East River, because it's always the East River, a Martian cloaked in red light, racing through a facility as sirens blare. There's been a level 4 security breach. We can go ahead and assume it's this alien. They make it to an elevator, slam all the buttons, and I'm sure whisper, "Close, close, close," as security sends bullets at them from the end of the hallway. The Martian makes it to street level as Jean continues saying he's sure the unknown alien feels how he did when he first arrived on this planet. Scared, foreign, far from home, alien. The alien is chased to a homeless encampment by many men with many large rifles, and using his powers, effectively disappears. The story shifts to follow a woman named Miss Ferdinand, tan-skinned woman with short black hair, almond eyes, and a disaffected expression, who's debriefing three men about the aliens' escape. She tells the men they were granted money, resources, and time to complete their research, but that any security breaches would lead to dire consequences. She tells the men she's bringing psyops, specifically a man named Giggs in to figure out how this happened. When the lead, Dr. Rodney, protests, she promotes his subordinate. When Rodney says he can't be fired, she agrees and shoots the man in the forehead and orders the two remaining men to find a way to get the alien back. When Giggs, a tall surly man with a permanent scowl, arrives, she tells him she wants the alien back in 30 minutes. If the alien isn't back in 30 minutes, she wants it killed. Giggs calls a man named Gerard. When he arrives, Ferdinand whispers what seems to be a nonsense rhyme in the man's ear. Twice around, then slip and fall down. Twice around, then wake and be found. Which causes the man's eyes to glaze over. Back in New York, Jean is getting closer to locating the escaped alien using his telepathy, tracking the humanoid to a construction site. But he has arrived at the same time one of the shadowy agents has arrived in a mech suit, who immediately unloads automatic rounds on him from a wrist gauntlet. Jean says Clark was right. Bullets do feel like needles. Refusing to waste time, Jean cuts the armor goon's head off with his heat vision. He dives deeper into the construction site and gets a random phone call from who knows who, telling him that this was never personal, that he shouldn't take offense to the work they do, that Jean should join them in the work they do, that he has a unique chance to save the planet. Jean promises if the alien is hurt, he'll take revenge. A moment before he's approached by the alien, another green Martian. Why does this matter? Because Jean, to his knowledge, is the last of his people. Before Jean can speak to the Martian, the hero is blown clear of the construction site by a psionic pulse. He crashes onto the street below, surrounded by a worried crowd who don't recognize him in his distinctly Martian form. Of course, an NYPD officer pulls his pistol, training it on Jean. When the hero says he's a member of the JLA, the police officer says he knows the Justice League, he knows the Manhunter, and he doesn't look like the alien in front of him. But Jean ain't got time to deal with fear and bigotry. He heads to an alley where the other Martian says they are. Meanwhile, a shadowy figure tracking said Martian finds the tracer the Martian had implanted by the shady organization. Jean relocates the Martian, telling them they have nothing to fear anymore, promising the alien is safe a moment before a psionic pulse rips through the Martian's chest and ignites the alien on fire for good measure. As the Martian goes through its death throes, he warns Jean that there are others. Jean spots the shooter on a nearby rooftop, and we see it was none other than Gerard, the brainwashed agent, and swiftly proceeds to punch the man off the roof. Standing over the downed agent's body, Jean thinks he's filled with one of the few human emotions he thought he'd never feel: hate. He says he better rein this emotion in quickly, because if he can't, no one on Earth can. No one. We're looking at you, Clark. The Others Among Us Part 2 opens to the secret base of the shadowy organization. They're in panic mode, rushing to evacuate the premises under the idea that the Martian Manhunter has probed Paul Gerard's mind and could be heading to them any second. When a security enforcer tries to help a red-headed scientist, he suddenly seizes up and, bleeding from the eyes and nose, falls to the floor dead. Methinks the red-haired scientist may not be what he appears to. 6 minutes earlier, we see that their fare isn't meritless because the Martian Manhunter rips the assassin's mind open before we're back in the present and see the red-haired scientist is actually Jean Jones shapeshifted. Before we shift to a meteor shower that occurred 4 weeks ago in the Sonoran Desert of Arizona. As a blonde man, clearly a scientist, sits alone on a phone call with a friend, the meteors crash to Earth. When he goes to investigate, he spots a golden medallion at the center of the wreckage. Confused, he tells his friend on the other end of his talkie that he's coming back in. In the present, Martian Manhunter is tearing through the facility. He is a Martian possessed, singular in his focus. His focus? The room housing green Martians strung from the ceiling, tubes of varying sizes forced through their skin. Jean tells them he's here and they're safe, while he thinks he'll never be alone again. He starts to help the Martians down before a voice from off-panel tells him to step away from the alien or face dire consequences. The voice? Another Martian, short, aged, and flanked by 3 others. We jump back to the past, 3 weeks and 5 days ago, where we find out there's a man here who works for Star Labs, DC's premier scientific organization. He's at their Sonoran Desert facility with his friend Sully, who points out Alex, that's the guy's name, has been staring at this medallion for 5 days now, saying it could just be space junk. Alex doesn't agree. He says there's nothing like it on our periodic table, making it the rarest metal on the planet at the moment. A moment before, a Jeep pulls up outside. Neither men are expecting anybody. Alex tells Sully to get the Jeep around back as he wraps the medallion in a cloth. A moment later, in walks Ferdinand, Rio Ferdinand. Alex, trying to play it cool, says this is private property, but as the woman's driven past 6 signs that display this message, he's sure she doesn't care. Ferdinand flashes a badge, saying she's from NASA's internal security team. She says the eggheads were running tests and picked up weird magnetic activity 2 to 3 days ago. Alex says they ain't seen a thing. When Ferdinand leaves, Alex says that woman wasn't from NASA. He knows because fresh out of school, he worked for NASA, and they go to the FBI for internal security. Sully says Alex doesn't even know what the medallion is. He should just give it to the woman, while Alex reads a business card that says William Dyer, Department of Extranormal Operations. A moment later, a bullet rips through the glass window of Star Labs and doesn't stop as it punches through the back of Sully's head while he's in the middle of a classic "conspiracy theories are unreal" kind of speech. In the present, the 4 Martians continue their mistrust of J'onn J'onzz, who says he's here to help and they need to leave immediately. When they ask J'onn where's Rokar, he tells them sadly that Rokar is dead. Of course, the biggest, seemingly strongest Martian rushes our hero before the eldest and wisest orders him to let J'onn go. When a soft-spoken, sad-eyed Martian asks where they took J'onn from, he says he wasn't taken, that Earth has been his home for many years. When the Martians wonder how J'onn's been living on Earth with white Martians, green Martians' mortal enemies, J'onn says there are no white Martians here. Humans are the cause of these Martians' issues. J'onn wants to leave, noting that they aren't safe having this conversation here. But the other Martians don't want to leave without the missing Martians. There could be up to 10 other Martians in this facility somewhere. 2 weeks ago in the Sonoran Desert, we see J'onn is in his most recognizable Martian Manhunter form, with the green Baldy talking to Alex, who tells him all about the medallion falling from the sky 2 weeks ago and the death of his friend. A second later, J'onn shapeshifts into William Dyer and psychically suggests that Alex forget his true identity, before giving the man a plane ticket to London and telling him he'll do everything in his power to keep Alex safe. 1 week ago, at LaGuardia Airport's International Airport Departures Gate, we find Alex, ticket in hand, about to board the plane to Heathrow Airport. The plane takes off and summarily explodes. Nearby, Giggs watches from the back of a Lincoln Town car, says it's done, and rolls up his window. Back in the present, J'onn holds up no less than 5 alien medallions. We learn these are called Kuru pendants, and they belong to the 5 Martians with him now. A moment later, J'onn senses a presence beneath them, and punching through the floor is outside of a safe room. Easy work for the Martian mauler, who punches the door in and finds essentially a torture chamber. When J'onn asks what happened here, the most seasoned Martian says unspeakable things and agrees with J'onn now. They should leave. But it's too late to run now. On a nearby security monitor, J'onn watches 6 heavily armored security goons load into an elevator, and at their center, Ferdinand. Rio Ferdinand. Inside the elevator, Ferdinand orders the men to lock and load and, just as cliche, shoot on sight a moment later. J'onn warns the other Martians to let him handle this, that he wants to talk to them, but these Martians are way past talk. J'onn says fine, he knows another way. As the goons rush into the room, they find, well, nothing. Why? Because J'onn is pushing his powers to the max right now, cloaking himself and the other Martians from the soldier site and thermal imaging. No easy task, as his previous record was 3 people, 1 time. The Martians are about to escape with no blood drawn, but no! One of the Martians takes advantage of the confusion and his invisibility to mind control the goons in the room and have them all kill each other. As the bloodbath unfolds, J'onn comforts the youngest Martian, admitting he can't blame his people for their bloodlust in this moment. Namely, because of all the human emotions he's observed, revenge is the only one not foreign to his people. The Others Among Us Part 3 opens to a circular glass skyscraper, J'onn J'onzz's current home. Speaking of, he says he's been thinking of the word a lot lately. Home. Its importance, what happens when it's lost, and why every sentient species will do anything to protect it. He says the JLA Watchtower was his home, but that's the past and he doesn't have the luxury of dwelling on it. He says for the first time in all the years he's lived among humans, this is the first time the words felt Alien. Inside the skyscraper, we see the youngest Martian has just discovered television, while the adults in the room debate next moves. Jean calls out the Martian named Mikakel, burly Martian with a patch over his left eye, who attacked him last issue. Jean says he respects him, but a fool would take that for weakness, that if the alien kills anyone else, he'll have to answer to the Manhunter, and that goes for all of them. They say Jean saw what the humans did to them. Whose side is he on? Jean replies ours, but the violence earlier was unnecessary and wrong, that he can only protect them if they let him, asking do they trust him. The eldest Martian says Jean is right. He has experience on this planet. They'll do what he thinks is best. Jean is at LaGuardia in his dire disguise next, while firefighters do their best to put out the carnage that was a flight to London. Jean moves through the airport to find Flight 21's manifest, and just as he suspected, Alex Ferguson never boarded the plane. In fact, Ferguson is holed up in what appears to be a shitty motel room smoking cigarettes, monologuing about the one guy he trusted in this whole mess, Dyer, and how the man tried to put him on a now exploded plane. So, the man must be working with Ferdinand. Ferguson realizes he's got some major league problems. And speaking of Rio Ferdinand, we find her on an estate talking with a white-haired man who's skeet shooting. Ferdinand tells the man they've got problems, namely the Martian Manhunter killing security guards, exposing labs, and freeing test subjects. The white-haired man says the lab ain't a pressing concern anymore, and he wants Rio to locate a man named Dyer. When he inquires about Ferguson, Ferdinand says he's dead, believing the man died on the aforementioned plane crash. The white-haired man says she better make damn sure, and what's more, she better take care of anyone the man could have talked to. He can't afford anyone out there knowing what they're getting into. Outside of Earth, we find a Martian Manhunter floating. He's thinking that human beings think Martians' ability to read minds is telepathy, but it's so much more. They feel and see everything simultaneously. When thoughts and feelings pour through them, this can be overwhelming, especially when taking into account weather patterns, magnetic fields, satellite feeds, tens of thousands of X-ray machines, and the billions of people on Earth. So he's floating outside of the planet we know and love, looking for Alex Ferguson. The same Alex Ferguson who's sitting on the edge of his bed, still seemingly talking to himself before his phone rings on a secured line. He picks it up and we see he's talking to a woman in a window across the alley from where he is in a similar apartment. She doesn't know he's watching her as they talk about her day and what she's doing right now. A love interest. Let's hope she makes it through this thing. Her name's Sarah, and Sarah shows annoyance with her beau for being missing for so long, but when the call ends, we see he's recording a message on a hands-free camcorder to her about why he's in hiding and how he'd never risk her life or safety. That he's got to find Dyer, find answers, and then they'll be together again. We see Martian Manhunter next, floating above an oblivious citizenry, scolding the young Martian Tillal for being outside. Tillal wants to learn about humans and wonders if they'll be afraid of him. Jean says humans will be at first because Martians are stronger and look different. But now Jean's got questions. Mainly, how did Rokar escape the lab? Tillal says Rokar was the last captured, so he was the strongest. That the Martians heard about Jean through the grapevine, and Mikakel had the idea to have all the Martians transfer their life forces into Rokar, hoping that he would be able to escape and find Jean. Meanwhile, we see the white-haired man in an office now, meeting with a woman who's just arrived in a copter, and tells him they've located all of whoever it is he's looking for. They're all on the West Coast. He says he wants the fee he selected brought in. Meanwhile, Ferguson's taking a trip to Dyer Investigations looking for the Martian Manhunter's alter ego, only to find a landline phone on the floor and nothing else. The breaks just keep on coming because he's spotted a moment later by Giggs, who under the orders of Ferdinand has been keeping an eye on the building. Giggs spots Ferguson, Ferguson spots Giggs, and the chase is on. Meanwhile, Jean has a bonding moment with the other Martians after he finds out Tillal knew his daughter. Jean learns that this group of Martians were off planet when the plague hit. That's how they survived. But before he can probe further, an alarm goes off and Jean realizes Alex Ferguson is in trouble. And the trouble? Ferguson just burst through an office door with Giggs men on his tail, blood running from his forehead. He crashes to the floor of an office and crawls towards a floor-to-ceiling window where a large futuristic ship has just risen to meet him, and quickly opens up with automatic weapons fire to put Ferguson on ice.
But
The
no!
Martian Manhunter is on the scene and after blocking every bullet with his body, tears through the machine with ease, saving an unconscious Ferguson's life at the moment. And it is only a moment to be sure, because a second later, two more ships rise to the window to meet the Martian. And these ships ain't come to talk. They open up on him with rounds of napalm, sending the Manhunter crashing through the wall of one building and the facade of a neighboring skyscraper. By the time Jean gets back to the body of Alex Ferguson, he knows two things. One, the man is dead. Two, it's his fault. 2 hours later, we find Jean with DC's big three, Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman, in the lab he rescued the other Martians from. Batman asks if he thinks this organization really cloned Jean's powers. Jean's sure of it. He says he was hit by a force that only another Green Martian could produce the other night. Wonder Woman isn't convinced. She and Big Blue and Bats, to be sure, think Jean's letting emotions cloud his judgment. Jean doesn't agree, but Bats reminds Jean he ripped a man's mind open the other night. Soups reminds him he altered Alex Ferguson's memory. Jean says the former was for information, the latter, the man's own protection. Soups wants to know if there's anything else they should be concerned about. Jean doesn't tell them about the massacre of security during the Martian escape, but when Soup says they can only help him if he lets them, Jean snaps, asking Superman what he would do if 5 Kryptonians walked into the room right now and said they were being hunted. Jean knows Clark would do everything in his power to protect them. Jean keeps spitting, saying they're both aliens to this world, but he's the one who looks different, and he's done hiding it. Whatever he's done, he's had his reasons. Soup says they're not good enough. Jean says if he doesn't fight for them, who will? When Baz chimes in that it isn't that simple, Jean asks what about this is simple. Alex Ferguson died trying to help him. Someone with enough power to avoid detection by the Justice League has been torturing his people, and all the quote unquote big three can do is stand here and rattle off reasons why it isn't that simple. Jean says if this secret group isn't stopped, their concerns about his behavior will be nothing compared to the mayhem they face, and unlike them, he chooses to do something about it. Meanwhile, we finally find out who the villain with the white hair and mustache to match is working for, specifically the Department of Homeland Security, because it's always the US government. And he's giving a speech about 5 potential enemies of the state, how they escaped, and how they were being helped by the Martian Manhunter. He's got one question for the 5 people in the room. How do they stop him? And the 5 people he's asking, the Black Canary, Zatanna, Green Arrow, Vixen, and the man with the green right hand, Hal Jordan, Green Lantern. Things are about to pick up. The Others Among Us Part 4 is pretty straightforward. We learn Ferguson's girlfriend's name is Sarah Moore. She learns Ferguson is dead, and the CIA learns Ferguson has a girlfriend named Sarah Moore and go after her. When Rio locates Sarah, she threatens the woman with death a moment before Martian Manhunter swoops in and rescues her. But Sarah's rescue was a part of the CIA's plan to track down the Martians, and it works. They surround the Manhunter's penthouse and let fly with napalm rockets before the Martian Jor-El is gunned down by a napalm bullet. The issue ends with Jean, the remaining Martians, and Sarah Moore flying off to parts unknown. The Others Among Us Part 5 opens to 3 military choppers crashing into the Hudson River because it ain't always the East River of New York City. There appear to be no survivors. 3 days later in rural Pennsylvania, we see a suited man in a crashed car on the side of the road firing a handgun wildly into the apparent empty space around him as someone in what we can assume is his headset asks if he lost a package. Whoever this man is, clearly he's got his own problems. Somewhere deep in the forest, Jean Jones opens his eyes. He's with the other Martian survivors, asking where Dallin is, a moment before Dallin shows up, shouting about the diversification in the area, but Jean, a large duffel bag in each hand for insurance, says they need to keep moving. Jean leads them to an abandoned housing development he owns, ensuring the group that no one else knows about it, and quickly locks Sarah in a bathroom when she shouts that she wants to know what's going on or be killed already. Jean says he's got to head back out, and when Dallin asks why, Jean reminds him that Siren's body has to be reclaimed so he can enter the spirit well, their version of the afterlife. He chides Dallin for forgetting their customs, but Dallin says he forgot because they're all tired. Meanwhile, Rio is back with the white mustached head of the Department of Homeland Security, and now we know he's named Keen. Keen refuses to believe Giggs is dead. He thinks the man's gone rogue. Back in New York City, Jean flies to his former penthouse, giving a great internal monologue. He says Martians have 22 words for home. It's an idea they hold sacred, but he still would have never come back here if Martians didn't have 27 words for friend. He says Siren's body is gone. He needs to find it because Martians have 72 hours to perform the Turya Moa, or Siren will be banned from the spirit well. He says after that, well, Martians only have one word for curse. It's all they ever needed. 2 hours later, Jean's back at the housing development in a different abandoned house, and we see where the missing Giggs got off to, namely, bound and ball gagged to a chair by Jean a la Pulp Fiction. Bloodied and beaten, Jean's been working the man over for one reason alone, to find where Siren's body is. When he gets the information he needs, he heads back to Mikakel, Tilaktalar, and Tilal, who have just found the tracker on Sarah and want to kill the woman believing she's spying on them. John's like, relax, that tracker could have been planted before taking him to see Giggs. When a man tries to make demands for his help, Mikako flies him 300 feet in the air, ready to drop him. Gig gets very cooperative. Jean heads to a place called Sullivan Imports on a dock where he finds Siren's body and is immediately ambushed. Alone and surrounded by fire, Jean thinks he's done for before he's rescued by Tillall, who asks if the man has any friends on this planet. Everywhere he goes, people are trying to kill him. Back at the housing development, Jean wants to know how he was ambushed. When Dalin says it must have been Giggs, Jean knows that's impossible because no one saw him get taken. So of course, they blame Sarah, but Jean trusts her. With this hanging over their heads, Tillall reminds Jean they need to start the ceremony for Siran, but Jean says they can't. Why? Siran was infected by Hiran Mears, the plague that wiped out the Green Martians. Jean says before he left Mars, he lit purification fires for dead Martians for 53 Martian days straight. He knows better than anyone what the symptoms look like. He says he's starting to believe this is why the Martians were experimented on, to find a strain of the virus that will work on him. Jean says whoever their enemies are, they understand that once the Martians regain their strength, there'll be 5 aliens running around with Superman level powers. They cannot allow that to happen. Their enemies know that a positive strand of the virus is going to come from them, but that means an antidote will as well. Tillall's like, bruh, we can just leave this world. We don't gotta be here. Jean says they're right, that this isn't his world, but it has been for a long time, and he owes it to the good people of the planet to protect them. He tells Dalin to conduct a test to find the antidote. The Martian says he's an academic, not a scientist. He won't be able to. Luckily for them, Sarah, listening the whole time, knows someone. While she goes to reach out to them, Jean, on a stroll with Tillall, tells the young Martian he's proud of the way the kid showed bravery standing up for Sarah against the older Martians earlier. Tillall says he was just doing what he knew Jean would. Jean says he's impressed the child hasn't been overcome by hatred for humans like Mikakel and Talak-Talar. Tillall says growing up, he heard stories of who Jean was, and meeting the guy he knows now, they're all true. See? Sometimes you can meet your idols. Something about what Tillall has said sparks something in Jean, though. He calls Mikakel and Talak-Talar to him, and they fly over the forest. Jean thinking that he assumed their enemies learned everything they know about Martians from the experiments they performed, and it's only now he realizes they must have had help. Help from someone with a practical knowledge of Martian customs and intimate knowledge of Jean. He decides this person is Scorch, a woman from an alternate reality with complete mastery over fire, who Jean worked with to cure his fear of fire. The two became lovers, but it was a star-crossed affair because she liked villainy a little too much. Either way, Jean and company goes to Star Labs, Eastern Metahuman Detention/Research Facility, to speak with her. They find she was transferred out last night by orders of the Department of Extranormal Operations. A moment before Green Arrow with Vixen, Zatanna, Black Canary, and the Green Right Hand Hal Jordan show up. Arrow says they need to have a serious talk. Jean and Arrow go back and forth a bit before Jean warns them that they need to leave. Now. Zatanna says they have reason to believe that the group Jean's protecting poses a serious national security risk. When Jean says he's not protecting them, he rescued them, Vixen says they're left with no choice and pounces. We didn't even get to see the fight, but we can assume Jean and company put the whole group down because when next we see him, he's in a morgue with Sarah and 2 dead bodies. The souls formerly attached to them belong to the DEO agents assigned to transfer Scorch. The 2 men look like they've been burned to death, but Jean knows better. He says the men were killed by a Martian. A green Martian. Meanwhile, back at the abandoned housing development, the ever-resourceful Giggs has managed to escape his bonds and sneak out from the basement of the house he's in. Racing through the forest, he meets a shadowy man standing alone at a fire and stops in front of him. He says thank God that the man has to get him away from here. But as the fire casts light on the man's face, we see it's none other than Dalin, who tells Giggs not to thank God just yet. And that's where we are!